to people that have obviously opposing viewpoints on not only the past, present, and future of this country. I was basically had to look for a couple reasons why. First of all, not to vote for Trump. First, his favorability ratings have made him electable. Mind you, this is also true with Hillary, but Trump's favorability ratings continue to be very low. And Trump consistently loses to Hillary Clinton on head-to-head polls, even in the swing states. Huge Republican defections are possible because of both Never Trump and people who are disenfranchised from his approach to things. And quite frankly, we have found his approach both adversarial and toxic. He won't be financially competitive in the general election because the super PAC supporting Hillary will probably spend north of about $2.5 billion against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump does not have $2.5 billion to go ahead and support himself in the general election as we go into November. Trump's strategy is entirely dependent on the mainstream media, basically. Liberals in the mainstream media have been giving Trump a free ride. And when it comes down to the crunch, basically, they'll be more critical, obviously. Mind you, Trump has been able to keep that in check by turning it around and by doing a bait and switch mostly on the liberal media, and I think they've been smartened up to it. And he's way too comfy with the white supremacist movement. He has knowingly retweeted a white supremacist, and by one count, 62% of the people Trump retweets are white nationalists. And there are now even white supremacists on robocalls for Trump. It is also not a shocker that David Duke is publicly supporting him by saying voting against Donald Trump at this point is really treason to your heritage. Trump's spokesman, Katrina Pearson, has said some really kooky things. And the man is very thin-skinned and can't be trusted as a president to go ahead and handle the real hard decisions and, of course, the attacks and the spears and the arrows that come his way as not only President of the United States of the only superpower in the world, but also Commander-in-Chief, which I think is also something that would be worrisome, very worrisome for everybody to go ahead and deliver upon the rest of the world, especially knowing the status of the Middle East and, of course, China's dominance in the Asia theater right now. Trump has extensive ties to the mob. According to a book written about him, throughout his adult life, Donald Trump has done business with major organized crime figures and performed favors for their associates. And Trump still supports citizenship for illegal aliens, despite what his rhetoric says. And Trump doesn't even make his own products in America. I could go on and on and on about how Trump cannot lead this country, for the next 4 years, for the next 8 years, let alone the next 4 years, because his age is 70, so he'll be 74 by the time he comes up to if he goes for a second term, he'll be 78, 79 years old, which is quite elderly. And of course, you know how the office tends to go ahead and age you. Mind you, this works for both people, both candidates, both Hillary Clinton and Trump. But, now, why would Hillary Clinton make a great president? Well, she's qualified. She's saying that she's qualified because she was elected senior class president of Wesley College, graduated with honors from Yale Law School before completing another year of graduate studies, worked on presidential campaigns with Barry Goldwater, George McGovern, and Jimmy Carter. Took summer job on Senator Walter Mondale's Committee for Migrant Workers in 1971 and chaired the Arkansas Educational Standards Committee while husband Bill Clinton was governor. Co-founded the Arkansas Advocates for Children and Family, and named one of the 100 most powerful lawyers in America by the National Law Journal in 1988 and 91. 8 years as First Lady of the United States, served as U.S. Senator from the state of New York, and served as U.S. Secretary of State. She's championed some amazing causes. One of the Secretary Clinton's greatest achievements is the Global Health Initiative, introduced in 2010. It's designed to put a focus on material on infant health, GHI, and implement strategy to improve medical facilities, and reduce the spread of HIV, and lower infant and maternity mortality rates inside of third world and second world countries. Beyond individual achievements, Clinton has made her life mission to ensure the world knows simply one thing, that human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. In every position she has held, like the former First Lady, has sought to bring women closer to equality, bringing issues like women's health, equal pay, and domestic violence to the forefront. She has never stopped making cracks in the glass ceiling. Her stance on the issue, she's a pro-equal rights for LGBT Americans, opposes using religious freedom to justify cutting access to health care and discrimination. She understands economic inequality and wants to fix it. She thinks that anti-vaxxers are stupid. Mind you, anti-vaxxers are people who don't believe in vaccinations. She supports gun control. She knows the criminal justice system in this country is broken. She wants to fix Citizens United. She supports other women to climb towards equality. And she supports American workers, and she's pro-choice. And also the fourth reason why is because First Gentleman will be Bill Clinton. The job of the first spouse is an important one. In addition to serving as public face for the White House, the first spouse is expected to take an active role in social activism and holds a significant advisory role. Who better suited for this problem than one of the most charismatic presidents our country has ever seen? No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you have to admit that charm is hard to say no to. And it's about time. When a woman takes up the mantle of leader of the free world, our nation will cross a line never to return. I'm saying that Hillary Clinton becoming president will magically create nationwide gender equality, because it won't. When we joined the ranks of our countries like Germany, Denmark, and Chile by placing a woman as our head of state, a new generation will grow up with an altered view of what a woman can do. And the bonus, of course, is that Donald Trump would not be president. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight and possibly interrupting your opportunity to see the beginning of that debate that's forthcoming. I hadn't planned on focusing on personality. I thought I'd focus more on policy, but I would like to just say, when you think about the individuals that are running, you have Donald Trump, who has created a business empire that employs 27,000 people. He has more senior female executives on his staffs than male executives, unlike Hillary Clinton, who has no senior female members on any of her staffs, and has never run a business, never run an activity, never had personal involvement in the economy. We heard some positions on why it would be detrimental to the country to have Donald Trump as the head of our state. I think we're all aware of the circumstances that are coming out of the congressional hearings. We're all aware of the rather disgraceful activities of the Department of Justice, particularly the FBI and Mr. Comey, and that fake investigation that they're leaking out now on Friday afternoons, bits and pieces, and investigation that is unprecedented in American jurisprudence, but determined that notwithstanding the copious activities involving the pay-for-play activities, the violations of the National Security Act, no prosecutor would take a case involving Hillary Clinton, but if it was someone else, if it was you or I, we'd be facing the strength of the Department of Justice. And that's not me saying that, that's Mr. Comey saying that. Every 4 years we hear this is the most important election of our lifetime. In context, maybe that's so. I think that today it's even more so. The Wall Street Journal tells us that 73% of America thinks we're going in the wrong direction. I don't think we've ever had a situation like this on a presidential election where that many people are dissatisfied. So I think this truly is a landmark election that we really have to give a great deal of thought to before we go in and pull those levers. The several polls that try to figure out what's on people's minds came up with a variety of issues. I'd like to talk about Donald Trump's positions on the top 5 or 7 of them. 84% of the American people are concerned about the economy. That's the #1 issue that's on everyone's mind. We currently have a U6 unemployment of 9.7%, not the 4% that the media is telling us with the fake adjusted numbers. The U6 is the actual unemployment that takes into account the people who have stopped looking for work, or have been off unemployment, and now are not considered unemployed. That's the real number. 9.7% is just a tragedy in a country of this nature. 80% of America is worried about terrorism. Curiously, 75% are worried about national security and foreign policy. Healthcare is on 74% of America's minds. Gun policy on 72% of America's minds. Immigration, 70%. And the open seat on the Supreme Court, 65% of America is concerned about that. We lost a great justice and a cornerstone of the understanding what the Constitution means when we lost Anthony Scalia. We've got a few more that may follow him in this next presidential term. Kennedy is 80 years old. If he were replaced by a liberal at this stage of his career, I'm not sure it would make a great deal of difference. He was far more moderate in his earlier years. I don't know what age has done to him, but he has a very curious understanding of the Constitution within the last 5 years. Justice Thomas is 68, and Justice Alito is 66. Now, in today's terms, those are young people. At least I think so. But you never know. I don't have a contract with God, so I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. And 68 isn't exactly a youngster. And it would be a tragedy to lose Justice Thomas, whose opinions, if any of you ever read them, he usually writes in the minority and a dissenting opinion. His opinions are absolute scholarship and just brilliant works. To that list, the Republicans add fixing the government and the deficit. The Democrats add climate change and inequality. Education, school loans, race relations also make the lists. Curiously, runaway regulation and overreach don't appear to be very high concern to the American people. I think that's one of the greatest problems we're facing right now, particularly with the current administration. But I'd like to go through candidate Trump's positions seriatim on those particular issues, starting with the economy. He's looking for tax reform. Our tax code is a disgrace. It's chock full of little bits and pieces that benefit the most wealthy and the ones who are able to buy the influence. It's an absolute tragedy. I'm an attorney. I read it. I don't understand it. I don't know how an ordinary layperson is supposed to come April 15th and fill out a tax return and try to figure out what the hell is going on. It makes no sense to me. He's looking for regulatory reform. Right now, we have a bureaucracy that is burying us in regulations. They are pumping out tens of thousands of regulations every year. They are costing our economy billions and billions of dollars. They are making it almost impossible to do business in this country. We heard that Donald Trump doesn't produce his clothing and wears in this country. Of course he doesn't. It's almost impossible to run a manufacturing facility under the regulations that have been established, particularly with the Environmental Protection Agency, slapping all sorts of regulations that are virtually impossible to comply with. It's almost not worth opening a shop here. It's much better, you're much better off looking overseas where you can actually make some money. Trade reform. It's Trump's position that we got the raw end of the deal, particularly when trade deals with China. He wants to see those renegotiated. He wants to see energy reforms. We desperately need that. Energy independence is the key to our security. We have a current administration that is doing everything in its power to prevent further exploration and extraction of gas and oil. We are now the #1 producer of gas in the world, despite the administration being done on private land. They won't allow the public lands to be opened, and we haven't had a permit for offshore drilling since the BP problem. They've done everything in their power to stop it. They've canceled existing permits to keep us from becoming completely energy independent. And until we are completely energy independent, we are giving our dollars to countries that are out to destroy us. He wants to bring China to the bargaining table. China, through its currency manipulations and its dumping, is hurting our economy. They're hurting American workers. You know, there's an awful lot going on with Trump having stuff made over in Asia. Well, I don't blame the man. He's an intelligent businessman. If he can get his products made at a better price over there without having to fight over regulations through the Chinese manufacturers, why not? He wants to protect American ingenuity and investment from the invasions of the Chinese. The Chinese don't particularly honor our patent system. They borrow it, and we get tied up in an international court for decades, and by the time the resolution comes to being, the businesses that were invaded no longer exist. He wants to revitalize American manufacturing. We have lost many, many manufacturing jobs. We're in Pennsylvania, we know that. He wants to see steel made in America again, as opposed to being made in Japan. Right now, you can get steel made in Japan, shipped to this country, faster than what remains of our steel production industry. We were the #1 producers of steel up until 25, 30 years ago. We need to get that back. We need to get our construction trades back. Terrorism, #2 issue. He wants to improve our intelligence gathering system, including better cooperation between state, local, and federal officials, and with our allies. We're too fragmented right now. There's too much slipping through the cracks. We have far too many people in this country that we know absolutely nothing about, or overstayed visas, who've walked across the border from Mexico. We have no idea who these people are, what their backgrounds are, what their allegiances are. He wants to compel the Department of Justice, the Department of State, and Homeland Security to provide the immigration history of all terrorists inside the United States, which was demanded of this administration by the U.S. Senate what has not been permitted by this administration, to have those agencies do the simple task of finding out who these people are, where their allegiances are, what they're trying to do to us. So we don't have these random workplace violences occurring throughout our shopping centers throughout the country. We're in football season. It's going to happen, that we're going to see something happen at a large gathering like football or the baseball playoffs coming. We're going to see something very tragic occur because we just don't know who the people are in this country acting in terror cells, and we don't have the information. That's a tragedy. Foreign policy, the number 3 issue, curiously. Unlike the position that's been taken by Hillary Clinton, he wants to ease and improve relations with Putin. All right? This administration has empowered Putin. He inherited almost a third world country that was completely taken apart with the dismemberment of the Soviet Union. He's managed to come to the forefront of the world stage largely through the inaction of this administration and largely through the actions of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. As I said, he wants to label China as a currency manipulator, crack down on the hacking and threats that the Chinese government impose upon our industry, our security. He wants to expand the U.S. military presence into the South China Sea. China is moving into its sphere of influence far beyond its borders. And of course, he wants to secure the southern border. He'd like to stabilize Iraq, that's been destabilized by this administration, by working more closely with the Kurdish forces, to reimpose sanctions on Iran and restructure that horrific nuclear deal that's going to make Iran a nuclear power. And working with Russia to try to stabilize Syria and work in concert to combat ISIS, as opposed to letting ISIS, which seemed to have blossomed under the current administration, bring it under control using the cooperation of the Russians. Shift the focus of NATO away from Russia and to ISIS. ISIS is a major threat right now. Russia is a looming threat and becomes even more so because we have a leaderless country here. So Russians have filled the vacuum and they have made him into the boogeyman. Well, he can be brought into control. Their economy is certainly does not have the ability to stand shoulder to shoulder with this country as a superpower. But they do have the military capabilities, the intelligence capabilities that we should be working with to combat ISIS. On health care, number 4 issue, he wants to completely repeal Obamacare, modify the existing laws that inhibit the sale of health insurance across state lines. That is absolutely absurd. By selling it across state lines, you get competition. Competition will bring prices down. Allow people to deduct the full cost of their health insurance premiums on their tax system, and allow for individual health savings accounts. Gun policy. He's a very strong advocate of the Second Amendment. He wants to enforce the laws that are on the books, fix our mental health system, and defend the rights of law-abiding gun owners. Immigration, I'm running out of time. Immigration, to triple the number of ICE officers. Impose nationwide E-Verify. A mandatory return of all criminal aliens. Do away with this catch and release that is the current administration's policy. Defund sanctuary cities from any and all federal funds that are flowing to those cities, and stop the ability of immigrants to find a safe place to hide from government, and end birthright citizenship. I don't agree with birthright citizenship. I think it's a travesty. increase the prevailing wage for H-1B visas. There is no reason in the world that we have these H-1B visas in this country right now with 93 million Americans unemployed and underemployed. The H-1Bs are coming in because they can work for less, and that is not what this country is about. If we would pay the H-1Bs the same as you would pay an engineer that's looking for a job here in this country, we wouldn't have them coming in. Set up a requirement to hire American workers first.
And, sir, you had mentioned earlier about Hillary Clinton wanting to raise taxes.
No, that is Hillary Clinton. Did she Hillary?
No, I'm an advocate.
You're an advocate
I
for her.
understand. I should have left her home.
I know.
But anyway,
Can't take it down.
that would only stifle our economy, and Donald Trump wants to cut our taxes, which would increase the workforce in our economy. Now, sir, you had made a statement earlier that Trump has ties to the mafia. Well, with Hillary wanting to increase the taxes and then put a 60% tax on the inheritance tax, if that isn't a mafia move, nothing is. Now, you couple that with the collusion that's going on between the FBI, Department of Justice, and the executive branch, it's very obvious what's going on in this country. And people are not stupid. People know what's going on. And I think the proof will be in the pudding on November 8th. Thank you.
Well, to answer the first question on the progressive tax system, basically, this country has pretty much been on a progressive income tax system for quite a while. And in fact, during periods of times, it's been up to 70%, sometimes 90%, depending, of course, on the engine that's the economy of the United States, basically. And it's a way to go ahead and distribute money that's collected from everybody in a progressive and an economic, social way in which we can go ahead and help plan into the future how this country grows, okay? That is the whole point about progressive income tax system. Basically, it was passed early on in the 20th century as an amendment that everybody agreed to. We've been able to make huge strides with the progressive income tax system, and like I said, when Reagan went ahead and dropped effective tax rates for individuals, led to about 35 to 38%. Unbeknownst to everybody else, by the time of the end of this, his terms, we were in debt, percentage-wise, to the tune of, I think, close to what was at the time, $1.5 trillion. And the deficit spending really pretty much started at the end of the Reagan days.
But now our debt is 20 trillion. And all that taxes that's being collected, the majority of that is going to support countries that want to kill us, instead of investing it in making America great.
Well, and that's the whole point, isn't it? It's how do we effectively present ourselves to the rest of the world as a first world country to go ahead and not only be generous, but also start economies that are in different countries in a way that we can go ahead and unite the world on a more borderless kind of world. We don't want to just go ahead and be, do you want to be a protectionist? Because as soon as we go ahead and go into a protectionist state as a country, wars start. Literally, wars start everywhere by us getting out of being involved with the rest of the world. And that includes not just money, but also the projection of power. And to do that, you need money to do it, and you need to collect taxes to do it. You can't just print money.
But you gotta use your tax money effectively.
We do, and that's why it's centralized. The command and control structure of the government is a lot more efficient
That's
than
the issue we're probably
individuals running it. So you need to have a plan, and if you don't have a plan, quite frankly, you can't effectively go ahead and project that power or that economy. You need a command and control structure in which you do not and, where you can, as a country, and also develop the world in a more, united way.
If I might comment. 1960, John Kennedy inherited an economy that was flagging. Democrat, substantial tax cut, and we saw economic boom. Ronald Reagan inherited a disastrous economy. He cut taxes, we had 35 years of economic growth. True, we did have deficit spending because he also inherited one of the weakest militaries we had since the post-World War II. And we needed to flex not only our economic muscle across the world, but we needed to rebuild the military and the intelligence network that had been completely dismantled by Jimmy Carter. We saw the Bush administration cut taxes and economic prosperity. Raising taxes does not create wealth. You cannot tax yourself to prosperity. Cutting taxes induces the entrepreneur to invest money, to hire people, to grow the economy. Government doesn't grow the economy. Government doesn't make anything. It takes from you to give to someone else.
Yes.
That's wealth sharing. Wealth sharing is not the way to make the economy work. The way the economy works is you have people build things, grow things. And we're not going to do that by taxing the people who are willing to take risks, put their money to work, and prosper. People who are prosperous are not evil. People who prosper are employers.
And they share.
Can I respond? The essence of money, believe it or not, there's not only virtue to it, but also a vice to it. And with that vice, there is greed. And you do need, as a country, to go ahead and keep that in check. And that's the whole point of social economic engineering, to where we, in a Keynesian way, are able to go ahead and seed those areas in which we can develop our country to compete with the rest of the world. And it has to be done from a planning standpoint, because otherwise, if you just leave it to chaos, then quite frankly, that's what you're gonna get. And when it comes down to a stronger military, if you project power by being the biggest bully on the block, everybody's gonna hate you.
They hate
So-
us now.
Yes.
I just put my hand up and be polite, but when you went to the virtue and greed, it threw me over the line there. We have been so virtuous, we've literally destroyed our own country by sharing our technologies with other countries. Yes, they have grown and prospered, but it's been to our detriment overall. So the end result is, yes, we should continue to be kind, but we need now, after so many years, and especially the last 8 years, especially after 2008, we need to start reinventing ourselves here, building up our infrastructure here, employing our people here, so that when we become truly prosperous again, we can become more virtuous to other countries down the road.
I agree. There's a certain amount of virtue in diversity also.
And I'll take greed any day of the week.
Right, and diversity is actually perfection, because infinite diversity is perfection. And while you can go ahead and develop that, it's important for us to keep an immigration policy to where we continue to go ahead and bring in people throughout the world in a diverse way, so that we can continue to go ahead and integrate with the rest of the world, because the world is growing. Look at it, you're 7.9 billion people, okay? 7.9 billion people. 3.8 billion people of that make less than $2 a day, okay? Another 5.8 billion, up to another 2 billion people, another 2.3 billion people, make less than what Mexican workers make in the rest of the world. So here we have 5.8 billion people that are not even close to our standards. How do you propose that we go ahead and raise the tide for the rest of the world? Do we do it by, obviously, we need to go ahead and train them, because the Peace Corps is a democratic thing. We go ahead and we teach them how to do it. And then we, of course, help and seed them also. We got
We're
to.
really not feeding them adequately and fairly. The reason why major corporations have taken their business out of this country is because they can gain greater profits by paying those workers at $2 an hour or $5 an hour. Customer service jobs, as a minor example. The majority of times you make a phone call to any major company, you 90% of the time speak to someone who has a job out of our country.
India. Exactly.
Well,
And if you ask them how much they're
outsourcing is
getting-
a corporate thing.
Yes, and they're very afraid.
It's Manny's turn, basically. I
Hey
think.
Manny, we're all for you, keep going.
Oh, next question, please.
I guess this is for Manny. We've been cutting taxes, as you said, since Ronald Reagan's administration.
We've been cutting taxes
No.
since Ronald Reagan.
Well, Reagan cut taxes.
Please don't
Bush-
interrupt the
Bush
question.
cut taxes. When my father passed away in 1993, the exclusion over which you would pay estate tax was $600,000. And I believe the marginal tax rate was about 70%. Now, only people who die with more than $5.4 million get to pay, and I think the marginal rate is 35%. So we get a lot less income from the estate tax, which I think every Republican wants to repeal. We have been listening to the benefits of trickle-down economics for 35 years, and the result is increased inequality in this country. I'd like to know how you can justify repealing the estate tax, which you call the death tax.
I'd like to know how anyone can justify taxing death.
The estate, people who die with more than $5.4 million, which affects very, very few people.
Why should the government have the right to confiscate accumulated wealth? What gives the government the right to do that? Because it's being transferred to the family member? Does that make sense to anybody?
In the Middle Ages, there was no transfer of wealth, the government got it all, so taxing it as
Well,
actually.
we've come a long way.
I have a question on
He's paying the piper.
If we need infrastructure investment, and I think a lot of people realize our airports, bridges, trains, tunnels, really needs investment, where is that money gonna come from?
Well, let's take a look right here in Pennsylvania. We had Governor Rendell collecting all that gas money, all that gas tax money. None of it went to fix bridges.
Thought it went up under Corbett, actually.
He was using that money to fund the state police.
So how does that address my point? Where are we gonna get the money to repair our bridges and tunnels? And
We're already paying the tax for that in our gasoline tax. It's not being employed properly.
You know, the interstate highway came in under President Eisenhower. When the marginal tax rate was like 90%, we had the money to have an interstate highway system. Now we don't have the money, apparently.
What's your point?
The point is that you continue to want to cut taxes, when obviously we need the money for investment in our schools, in our highways, in our children, to retrain workers who have lost their jobs because of globalization. The money has to come from somewhere, and we've been listening to trickle down for 35 years, and it obviously doesn't work.
It doesn't work because look at the other side of the ledger. Okay? Where is the money going? The bulk of our money is going to entitlements.
I'm gonna switch hats here for a second. Dwight Eisenhower also at the same time set up a lockbook trust fund called the Transportation Act. The Transportation Act was a trust fund that was supposed to keep all that money that was collected in taxes for the repair and also for future investment of the highway system. Like every lockbox that's ended up in Washington DC ends up being robbed. So quite frankly, I think there's a lot of corruption inside the Washington DC area basically that tends to rob that lockbox. And yes, as we tax more, as we tax more, we tend to lose more because we concentrate it in one place. As soon as we concentrate all that money and wealth in one place along with the command and control, typically it corrupts absolutely. And so I very much believe in decentralization of that power. And the problem with decentralizing anything in the command and control structure, typically what happens is that people will fight like hell to keep it. And it's like taking a pacifier from a baby. You know, how do you do it? You take it and let them scream for 5 days, or you go ahead and just slowly cut a hole in it. The point being is that I think we need to go ahead and decentralize power. And quite frankly, that has a lot to do with the 10th Amendment, that has a lot to do with states' rights, that has a lot to do with the individual. Now that, I'll switch my hats back to Hillary Clinton.
There's another side of this room now.
Please.
All right, just a couple of things. I was listening to the report on the important issues, and to be honest, I haven't heard the issue concerning the laws that's going directly against the churches. I haven't heard that too much on either. Well, on one side, I already heard Hillary Clinton said, like you just said, that regardless of what my religious beliefs are, that what she's going to do is override that. So we know where she's coming. But on the other side, I haven't really heard a defense on the Republican side concerning that. And, you know, I recall in the 80s, anybody that ran for office, it was basic family values. And you didn't have to put it in the back line or any other stuff like that, you see. And I think it's been devalued. Okay, another point, and so you could answer that. Another point, constantly on how we're part of the world. I remember the president, one of the things he said, I'm a citizen, he wouldn't say United States, he says I'm a citizen of the world. Well, he acts like that. And this is one of the reasons why Americanism doesn't have the impact it does, and it should have that. Because here's what I'm saying, while we're going around thinking about peace and love, your enemy is building stronger and stronger, and our allies is getting away from you because they need that protection that we promised to them in writing. So even though you could complain about what happened in Iraq, that we shouldn't do it, you still have an agreement with them people that you would defend them no matter what. You didn't do that, you deserted them, and that's the same part they did in Vietnam. So those two things. As far as this thing about tearing down the identity of the United States of America, that's a no-go. Because you see something, you are part of the world, but you're going to take my identity away as an individual nation, and that shouldn't even be considered. So right now, the president, what does he do? If he can't get it from Congress, where does he go to? The UN, who hates your guts. They tell you they hate their guts, but that's what he's doing. So he's circumventing all the laws that's passed by the people in America.
Well,
That's 'cause
I
he
guess
has a
I'll take the
plan.
last thing first, because this is an attack on.
And I'll talk about religion.
Right, the first thing is that as citizens, we have to go ahead and also involve ourselves by knowing that there's just exceptionalism, obviously, American exceptionalism in the world. Hillary Clinton is not
I really
taking away
spoke
from
on the
that.
church first.
Well, that's why I said I was gonna take the last first. Okay,
Easy.
No, that's the way my memory works.
Right.
You should hear the way I go ahead and, read things back to everybody. Anyway, the whole point is that American exceptionalism is not just to go ahead and compete with the rest of the world, it's obviously to go ahead and be an example to the world. Okay, Hillary Clinton is very much promoting the fact that we need to be that shining light on the hill, like Reagan talked about, that St. Thomas Aquinas talked about, even when it comes down to, a city on the hill. And basically, that shining light basically has to do with the fact that we need to spread that wealth throughout the world, along with our ideas and the fact that we need to go ahead and also reinvigorate 7.8 billion people that are in poverty. I mean, how do you do that without basically having everybody fear lack? And what happens when you fear lack? You hoard things. And as soon as you hoard things, people fight over it.
But that comes from those nations like Cuba and all those other nations that a lot of wealth come to them. And what do? It's because of their own personal policies that they're suffering like that, because we send them billions of dollars. And y'all see Arafat, when he died, he didn't die poor either. So I'm just saying, what you're saying, all things being equal, it just isn't equal. You can send them all the money in the world, they're gonna take the money and their people starve. The Palestinians, the same thing. You send them money, millions of dollars on a constant basis. They busy building tunnels to invade.
I don't think Hillary Clinton is to give people carte blanche. I think in many different ways.
She didn't say too much about the unmarked money we just gave to Iran. The billions of dollars, hush money.
Well, that's a different
Hush
administration.
And she said she continued the same policy. But that's on one thing. On the church thing, and I don't mean to interfere, but I felt that the church thing should have been number one. At one time in America, it was number one. And if you was going to promote America around the world, it should have been promoted as a Christian nation, like the history book says. But we take that part out. That
Well, we got the
too.
rest behind us.
Instead, Islam comes over here and you recognize it in Washington, D.C., and yet Christianity is almost outlawed in this nation.
We have seen an unprecedented assault on Christianity in this country. We have a First Amendment that is being brutalized. We have a Supreme Court that has 4 judges on it who don't think that the Constitution has meaning today. Ruth Bader Ginsburg thinks it's some old document that needs to be discarded. There are 2 parts to the religion clause in the First Amendment. They only look at the Establishment Clause. Anything that they can possibly contort to be establishment of religion, the government, state, local, and federal, seem to want to suppress. Well, there's another part of it, it's the free exercise part. We don't talk about that, and the government doesn't talk about that. The laws that are being passed, the freedom of free exercise of religion, in my mind, it's absolutely unnecessary. I've got the First Amendment. That trumps everything.
But I was still thinking about the candidates individuals. First of all, I hope I'm not too harsh because, whatever you
First
stand
of all,
for.
Hillary Clinton does not go ahead and profess anything against the free exercise of religion. Okay, period. I've never seen her go ahead and actually go ahead and talk about restricting the free exercise of freedom of religion, let alone the freedom of assembly.
I'm going to take issue with you on that because she has taken a position that the freedom of religion statutes cannot be used as a masquerade for discrimination.
Exactly.
Well,
That was a
that's a
discrimination.
broadside attack. Christianity is what it is. If you don't like it, don't follow it. Right.
But isn't that the establishment of religion?
No, it isn't.
All right, that's.
How is it not an establishment of religion if you go ahead and back Christianity over Islam?
You're not backing anything on it.
Let's
It's
not
not
get
a government's business. They don't belong in there.
Well, you understand what happened when you first had to, when you have a balance of something and it's
It says
completely
the
off kilter.
Constitution, the
It's
Constitution
off
says
kilter.
that the government
And
should
when you have
establish, but
something
also
that's
should
off
interfere.
kilter,
So
you
when the
need to
people
go ahead
say,
and
let's
push
do it,
You need to go ahead. That's what affirmative action was all about. Was able to go ahead and rebalance those things that were off balance.
it didn't interfere with religious
All
freedom.
right, fine, we got it. I'm gonna go back to the taxes just for a second, okay?
Something more important.
You always hear from the left or from whatever you wanna call it.
I don't care.
The answer is more taxes, okay? More taxes. The answer is not throwing money at problems, okay? There is money. There's just no more money, all right? We do not have a money problem. We have a prioritization problem. I don't see anyone in Washington, whether it's in the executive branch, the legislative branch, doing anything to establish priorities in this country. Everything's important. Well, if everything's important, nothing is important, all right? We've got to take a look at things. On a smaller scale, right here in our own neighborhood, we have in the Stroudsburg School District a similar problem, right? Decisions have to be made. The hard calls have to be made on what's more important than something else.
What's more important than the education of your kids?
It shouldn't be done by the government.
All right, what's more important? I don't know, but you know what?
Safety.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows that. The people that are supposed to be making those decisions, making those calls,
The money
examining
to
those
educate
costs,
the kids.
examining all of the things that need to be done to create a priority list, haven't done it. all right? A priority list not only helps you
In order to get
fund
the
the
best
things that must be done that are most
education we
important,
can for our
it
kids,
also helps you if you
we
get
need to
additional
pay
windfall
them
money
enough
to fund
money
things
to
that
do
haven't been funded. The bottom line is, nobody is doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. The most important thing is to educate our kids. You have to have the money to educate our kids. We do tax our community. You know and I know that we have the highest tax rate in Monroe County. We have the money. The problem is just because you have the tax dollars does not mean it's spent in the right places. That's exactly what he's talking about. We need to focus on our priority, and that is the education of our students.
Well, and that's why it's being, as far as the money's collected, and as far as the county is concerned, for reassessment. Reassessment will go ahead and establish that the demographics have changed in this county. And with that demographics, we'll find out basically whether we're getting enough money or not. And then it'll be reprioritized by the state as far as funding is concerned. Whether it goes up and we find out the assessment's higher or lower, then our funding will be
I
changed
didn't mean to
accordingly.
bring,
That reassessment will be okay as long as they establish rules before the reassessment is put in place.
I didn't mean to bring
However,
the
that's not
discussion
going to be
down to
the
this
issue.
level, I want to use that as an example.
But
The
when
fact of the
somebody's-
matter is, that if we're talking to presidential candidates, to be frank, they could care less about our problems locally. Okay, they don't care about our problems nationally, so.
Right.
The thing is that, my point is, there is no prioritization process at any level,
At any level.
at any level.
Just to step out of my role for just a second. What I don't find either the Clinton campaign, or I can't find in the Trump campaign, is an address of our debt. Every great civilization failed through debt.
Yes.
And we're on the precipice, and I don't see either side addressing what we do about the debt.
We are reaching a point where fiscal chemotherapy won't help us.
Right. That, to my
We
point.
have cancer, we have monetary
To finish
cancer.
my point, we're not addressing our debt, we're not cutting our governmental costs, we're not doing what is fiscally responsible at our government level. So how does the state, actually respond to that, trickling down to a local level? Nobody's taking fiscal responsibility to do what's right because you're not even doing it at your government level.
Well, that's the whole
We
point.
have to take responsibility and we have to cut our expenses at that level and stop taking the money from our taxpayers and using it as they see fit. It has to be designated. And when it comes to taxing people on estates over $5 million, haven't they been taxed up until the day that they've died, and now you want to tax them again?
All of our earnings
Seriously?
have been taxed. There was a question of that.
Wait, I'm not finished. And I think a real question. What was the reason that we did stop the drilling in our state land besides the BP issue? Does anybody have an actual reason for that?
The administration took the public lands off the
For what reason? Is there an actual reason?
environmentals.
They just
Completely
consider it
policy.
environment.
They want to control us.
Well, no,
It would be harmful to the environment to use the public lands for this exploitive drilling and oil exploration.
In their opinion.
That's not my opinion.
Right, in
plus
their
of
opinion.
all, plus of all, there's the safety issue.
So Marcellus Shale got to do it on private land, just not public land.
Well, and that's decreased too because of the price of natural gas.
Oh, correct, I understand.
Bruce?
You mentioned the virtue of taxation and why it was important that it was virtuous for us to, I'll paraphrase, basically to export some of our wealth and to share it with the world and et cetera. Do you believe that it's do you believe that it's virtue that has attracted enormous amounts of money from the hedge fund managers and also the owners, the executives of Silicon Valley to the Hillary Clinton campaign? Do you believe that it's their virtue that they're most concerned about protecting? Or do you think that it's the rigged system where they can arbitrage the nation to their benefit? and that Hillary's on board with all that.
Yeah.
When it comes down to foundations, and especially,
I'm sorry, the campaign specifically, the foundations, nobody could defend that. So, the campaign specifically, $20 million from one.
well, Hillary Clinton is not alone and being able to go ahead and put up a nonprofit foundation. I mean, St. Luke's is the same, it's a 90%, they only have to go ahead and get
They don't
back 10%.
campaign, they don't campaign.
Just the campaign.
And they don't have any ties in the State Department.
It's totally separate.
Oh, okay.
They're totally two separate things, campaign and, yes, absolutely.
Unless you're using the money for campaign.
No. There's one's for influence for the nonprofit, and the other one's basically to go ahead and do within the law, the federal guidelines and election laws and funding laws. She has stayed way well within the parameters of the law. And if you can do it to prove otherwise, prove it.
That's a good one. Did you do a good job?
Do you realize how happy Bill Clinton would be as First Lady with all the interns?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Especially if he does have to.
With all the interns, how happy he would be
You
as
have to
First
bring it
Lady?
down to that level, okay?
He's too old.
Especially since
He'll play a saxophone, that's about it.
since he can walk in the girls' restroom at any
I had to go there.
time.
Plus of all, he has a lot of charisma, and he'll attract.
Yeah, that's the
Sure, he
problem, yeah. All right, we went there, that's not good.
All right, so I don't need to send a Christmas card back.
He did a good job.
Are there any other questions?
No.
There's not. Andy, you have another one?
Does it bother you that Donald Trump refuses to release his tax returns so
Not
that
at
we
all.
don't know what his 500 businesses are involved in around the world, whether he actually gives money to charity, whether he has used his foundation as a way of paying off his legal bills? I mean, these are all issues that might be clarified if we could see his tax returns.
Person's tax returns are personal. And I don't think that it's a matter for public snooping.
There's no law.
I think he should release his tax returns when Mrs. Clinton releases her $30,000 of lost emails.
If he has nothing to hide, he should release them.
And so
She has.
Not a tax return.
Well, she has. And quite frankly, her donations have been generous.
I believe last
Her
year,
donations,
$2 million.
they came from all the countries that hate us.
No.
Through their Canadian.
No, like anybody else, they get paid.
Yeah.
Paid to do, go around and make speeches and also go ahead and.
Millions of dollars on their personal tax return.
Facilitate things. I mean, people are paid to facilitate things.
It went to their foundation, $46,000 of their donations last year out of the millions that they paid, only went to other entities. They got the money and then kicked back to their
All
own
legal.
foundation, which is legal.
All legal.
Which is legal, but it's just a little sour.
The direct response is, no, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. The person's tax returns are personal, it's not a matter of public policy. I don't want my tax returns published. I don't think you want yours published either.
But every president since Gerald Ford has released their tax returns.
And does that make it a requirement?
It's
I
not
wonder
mandatory.
why not?
Well, I think that Donald Trump should do the same thing he did right before the first debate. Agree not to support a candidate who wins the Republican candidate, then of course change my mind.
You mean like Ted Cruz?
No, Donald Trump, of course, said that he didn't know whether he was going to go ahead and support the Republican nominee, whoever it was, and then he changed his mind. He evolved. Oh, okay, that's evolved. Yes.
No, you're afraid. Yeah, you're very afraid.
No, I'm waiting for a question.
This is
There's no question, it's always been statement.
This is for Hillary. Have we
One of those
seen
jackets.
all of Hillary's private emails? Have they all been released?
She's
Isn't there?
disclosed all of them.
She hasn't. Okay, I'm gonna ask you again. Have we seen all of Hillary's private emails? Or are there like 900 and some?
So have we seen all your private emails?
I'm not running for president.
Well, you're a school board director. You're a public official. How about we go ahead and start digging into your emails?
Well, I
Well, you
think
know
the
what?
reason
Quite
that we need to
frankly,
see
I don't
those
have anything
emails.
to hide. Quite frankly, I don't.
Okay, let's.
There's no probable cause to look at
I
this.
think the reason.
And
that
right,
we
I'm not
see
under
those emails-
I'm not under investigation and there is no probable cause.
I think the reason we need to see those emails
No
is
probable cause.
the Secretary of State, a member of the National Security Council, was using a private email service to send and receive top secret information, and now it's being released by the FBI
That could have been
to
hacked.
and from the president.
That could have been hacked.
Yes.
But-
yes.
That could have been detrimental to our
You know as well
country's
as I do
security.
that
You, Hillary,
Now, mine
someone
has
with
no
that level
relevance
of
to our security.
classification and clearance
Hillary's
is fully
representative.
aware of the fact that even having that stuff outside of the system is a felony.
I put trust in a lot of people that I surrounded myself with and to go ahead and keep me within the constraints of the National Security Act. And in a way, I did everything I needed to do to keep those things, inside the wall.
Something equally as important,
Didn't
and
read-
probably
didn't read
more
Friday.
important than that, than emails, okay? That's a moral breakdown, okay? Let's talk about the
Are you
fact.
saying that she intended?
No,
that?
I'm just saying that was a moral breakdown, or a breakdown of whatever, judgment, bad
morality is
judgment.
based on
Let's talk about a physical breakdown, all right? Let's talk about the fact that there are repeated examples of your candidate constantly exhibiting side effects from medication for Parkinson's disease, all right? That's a fact. We don't even know that if she's elected, she'll make it to the inauguration. We need emails released. We need
I'm sure.
medical records released. Why is a doctor accompanying her everywhere? That black fellow, he's not a CIA agent. He's not in the social, whatever the security, all right? He's a doctor. He's a doctor, all right?
I'm sure that if Hillary Clinton's ailments, whatever they are, were debilitating to the point where she could not be president, I'm sure the National Command Authority, along with other responsible individuals, will take action to go ahead and make it otherwise.
I don't think so. I don't think
We all
I
saw
don't
the
think they
video,
will,
and I think it speaks for itself.
you know?
Can we wrap it up and maybe have closing comments, maybe 2 minutes each from each candidate?
Hillary Clinton is obviously the best candidate in this presidential election because of the things I started off to begin with. One, because she has experience. Two, she understands the rest of the world. She has, and three, because of her ability to go ahead and empathize, not only with those people that have less fortunate, but also the diversity that is needed in this country in order to become a great nation again. And
Brad, you're doing a great job. And I'm allowed to laugh at Hillary for every day.
oh, all right, thank you. I could go on. I was waiting for you
Abraham Lincoln taught us to judge a man not by his friends, but by his enemies. Donald Trump's enemies are legion. They are the establishment, they are the left wing of this country, they are the people that don't want to see the status quo that has us in the malaise we have been in for the last 8 years. They don't want that challenged. He's the outsider, he's the man that has built a financial empire, employs 27,000 people, he knows how to make business work, and he knows how to stop the corruption that is destroying this country. We don't need another 4 years of Barack Obama. We need someone like Donald Trump
to actually come in and drain the swamp and get us back to making America great again. Thank you.
Thank you.